mine are such prima donnas. If you give them a bigger piece of, they like blueberries. If I just give them a blueberry, there's a couple that'll take the blueberry. The other ones want me to squish it, and then they'll take. I mean, well, there's no way they would eat a mouse. They won't eat a whole blueberry without it being squished.
That's funny. So what about what you would say, and this is probably things that you would be asked at a council meeting about sustainability. So, let's say I was a council person that was arguing and said these dirty things and all they're going to do is create more carbon dioxide and whatever, and I think potentially misconception, but what are sustainability elements of a chicken?
Well, number one, I mean, granted, I wouldn't give them a piece of totally rotten lettuce that was left in the back of the kitchen that you couldn't find, but that kind of not so crispy one that you don't really want in your own salad. They love that stuff. So in a lot of cases, with food waste being the highest percentage of stuff that people throw away, and we all know there is no away, is food. So if you can make use of a lot of the stuff that you have, I mean, there's some things they shouldn't have, like onions. They lack the enzyme to break down the one component that's in onions, so it's not good for them. And citrus and candy, but I'm not going to share my candy with them anyway, so that's okay. But so a lot of the food waste stuff, you're decreasing the fees that the town has to pay for the trash and whatever, since most towns don't collect, like they should be collecting garbage. When I grew up, there were garbage trucks and you put your garbage out. Nobody knew anything about composting, but it didn't go to the same places the trash did. They technically were way ahead of their time when I was a kid, 74 years ago. But anyways, it decreases the fees to the township, number one. Number two, at least their waste can be composted. So whatever kind of bedding that you're using can go right in the composter. Takes about 8 weeks or so that it's not so hot that it's going to burn your plants. And dog waste can't. I mean, we allow dogs make a whole lot more in poundage of dog feces, and you can't do anything with it but put it in the trash in a plastic bag, because you've had to collect it to put it in the plastic bag. So most of my stuff goes right into my composters. I do have one little area that when I use straw in my run, and I do the deep litter method in the winter time with the wood chips, and in the summer I use PVC. So everything can get composted, but I do put some in the back and break it down more, and then use it in my flower beds and all that kind of stuff. So, and no, I don't think the carbon dioxide is any kind of issue. And most people that have backyard chickens don't use any kind of artificial fungicides and pesticides and all that kind of stuff, or fertilizers in bags that come from the oil industry and have all of the terrible stuff in them that can really cause issues, because we can use what the chickens give us. So it's an added benefit. The eggs are really a small part of it, really. I think everything else involved with them, and they do my work. The older I get, it's really cool. Here's a bunch of stuff. Get in there and stir it around for me. Half the time, because I have 4 or 3 composters, and 2 of them are square. And we lift the bottom up, and it's like, okay, where's Nellie? I know she's inside the composter, because she'll get in there and start working it and kicking it out. She's doing all the work. It's really wonderful. I mean, they're very good. But I think a lot of it, if nothing else, just the whole idea that not so much stuff's going out in our trash, since everything's together pretty much anymore, makes it cost effective.
My wife is a huge gardener. I know many others, and we're talking market farm size. So we have about a half an acre, and that's a big garden area. And our chickens, literally, there's a group of them that live in the garden, and they get rid of bugs, and they get rid of a number of things. Now, some of them will peck into some of the fruits as they start to occur, so she actually moves them around a little. But she is convinced that her chicken compost is the best compost that she has. And she has compost from a variety of different kinds of animals. So,
Yeah,
That's
I
a
mean,
great-
I love it, and and the same with leaves. I mean, if I have very little grass even in the front yard, and I will let it, if other than a couple times a year, I'll collect some of it, and because I'll put it back for the chickens. But then I don't put any because I feel like I'm fertilizing what little I have. But I keep planting micro clover and making more and more flower beds and stuff like that, and less grass. But leaves, I mean, the same thing. They break down the leaves, and you're getting wonderful leaf mold out of them for the garden. It's just so perfect. It's the way it ought to be.
It's awesome. Mason asks a great question here for you, Gwen. What kind of shelter do chickens need in winter? And how tolerant are they of cold temperatures?
Oh, they actually do way better than in the winter than the summer. Summers in South Jersey are notorious for the horrific heat and humidity. So it's not that dry heat that some people have. We have to actually work way harder in the summer. I have two fans that go one in either direction kind of thing for extra ventilation in the chicken coop. And I have to put ice bottles inside their water. But chickens are raised all over the world except in the Arctic and Antarctica. So way higher up north than we are, and they're fine. If you build the right size coop, their body temperature is 104 compared to our 98.6. And just this one picture that's up now, they cuddle together, so they're helping to keep each other warm. And mine would even, they're not mine, that's just a stock photo, but mine that look at me like I'm crazy if there's a quarter of an inch of snow. Like, you expect me to walk in that, and they don't even want to come out in the snow. But no, winter's really no problem. It's the summer that's a problem.
And Mason, one thing they do, and I'm sure we've seen a picture, I've just been trying to focus on thinking and looking at Gwen in her webcam, but they roost at night. They will not sleep on the cold floor, even in hay. They will get up on something and they will cuddle together, as Gwen says. And I've been out with ours at 40 below zero Fahrenheit. And honestly, we've actually added some heaters at times, worrying, and they just get together and they just bring their feathers around each other. Even, I mean, it's pretty amazing. It's it's a flock mentality, and as Gwen said, these are very intelligent animals, so they figure it out. But they sleep off the ground, and therefore that's a big thing to keep that heat away. It also helps them in summer for the opposite way, because we're like you, we don't get humidity, but we get dry heat, and they have the more movement of air in the summer is something that they really like because it's easy. How about molting? When they molt, how often does it occur where you're at, Gwen? And tell people, just because some people see molting chickens, if they think they're sick or something, but that's just.
Or we had one person that did complain about their neighbor's chicken, mainly because she thought that a hawk had gotten it and she didn't want her grandchildren seeing the hawks kill chickens, and all it was the feathers from molting. Wasn't really a complaint. Yeah, normally the fall, early fall, late summer, after they're a year old, and they can either have a slow molt, so they don't lose quite as many feathers in it, but it takes longer, or they can have a short, horrific one, and one of my chickens does that, and I swear she loses at least half of her feathers all the time, but it's quick, and they come back quick. The problem is they can't make feathers and eggs. So a lot of times the egg supply will start to significantly go down when they're molting, which is early in the fall, but also the daylight hours are shorter. And I don't personally believe in putting lights in the coop because I feel like that's nature's way of giving their bodies a break. So, this is the first year I had to buy eggs in the winter. I bought 3 dozen eggs. I probably really didn't need the last dozen because I had hardly started it when I started to see an egg here or there. This is a picture at the bottom. We participated in the town pride parade the last couple of years, which has been a real kick. But yeah, so I mean, the fact that mine are almost all 4 years old, they're like women, they slow down, they don't stop right away. And add that in with the shorter daylight in the molting, as they get older, you might not, like most people, get any eggs. And I think that freaks people out too, because they think they're going to have a steady supply all year round, and you don't. But what I do is I'll start stockpile, and I just didn't start early enough this year. And I have a refrigerator downstairs that we don't really go into, and they're not washed. I don't wash my eggs, and until I'm ready to eat them. And therefore, they keep the bloom, or the cuticle, which is the transparent coating that is on there right when the chicken has the egg. It dries in like 30 seconds. And they'll dehydrate before they go bad. So I was eating November eggs in January, totally fine. Never had a problem. I just didn't save enough. So this year I'll start saving a little earlier.
Yeah, Gwen, we have eggs that if they're clean, we just leave them right on a shelf. We don't even refrigerate them for.
Right, I don't either.
And they're the best tasting eggs. I mean, everybody that ever gets our eggs will say, I've never had anything like this. These are just amazing in how they taste. And so, yeah, so that's a misconception. I mean, and that everybody thinks, oh, they've got it and they got to get it so dirty. No, actually, if they're laid in some kind of straw or hay, they stay really clean. Do you have any problem with birds eating their eggs sometimes? And if so,
No.
how you found to deal with that?
Yeah, no, I've actually never had a problem with that. I know people that have, and I mean, the one thing is certainly it's fine to give them eggs back. It's maybe a little extra protein might help with molting, but at least make them scrambled eggs, because they don't connect that scrambled eggs for their eggs. But they should never be given any raw eggs for that reason. And if you collect them often enough, and you have a big enough egg box, that they're not going to fall, because that has happened once or twice, where one must have kicked the egg and it fell down into the coop. But, I'm out there a couple times a day, and I've never seen any of mine eat eggs. So.
Here's several comments. Alicia's amazing. She always gives comments, so everybody should know. Please look at the questions after the webinar and see the references that she's given. What about your own experience with their lifespans? And have you seen various varieties that live longer than others, and so on? And that's another one, is how do you recommend that people choose and where they get their chickens from when they first get started?
Well, one of the interesting things, even though I have therapy hens, I have never done them from chicks. I babysat chicks for a friend when they were less than a week old, because she had to go lecture. And then they came back when they were about 6 weeks old for a couple of days. So I feel comfortable teaching about it in my class, but I've never raised them. So one, to me, chicks don't mean that then they're going to turn out to be wonderful therapy hens, because none of mine I got when they were chicks. The youngest I ever got were 14, 15 weeks old, and I got one pair of chickens that way. The biggest issue is that the red sex-linked ones, and you've seen a lot of pictures of Rosie. I actually have had 4 over the course of time that were red sex-linked chickens. And they are so wonderful. They're great for kids. They're loving. They make wonderful therapy hens. But also the big breeders realize that they are wonderful egg layers, extra large brown eggs, almost every day, all year round, even if they're more than a year old. So they started really overbreeding them. And now a lot of the red sex links wind up with eggshell peritonitis. So the egg actually backs up and then breaks up, and then they get infected. So out of my first 4, because we were allowed 4 the first year till we all made sure everybody liked what they were doing, 2 of them were red sex linked, and one of them was Rosie. That was my first therapy hen. But the other one really didn't seem to, she just started acting not well, and it didn't take very long, and she died. And I actually had a necropsy done because I was concerned Rosie was going to nursing homes, and did she have something that I had to worry about? And I had a really nice long talk with one of our state vets, because you take the body up to around Trenton for us. and they do a necropsy there. And she explained the whole thing about the red sex linked and about the peritonitis, and said, no, it's not something that's contagious, but it's so common in that breed. So then, sure enough, I don't think it was more than 8 or 9 months later, Rosie died too, because they were about the same age, and they must have come from the same breeder. I had gotten them from somebody that had a little mini farm, and so she didn't raise them from chicks. She kind of got them in and then sold them. So that was 2, and I guess that they were probably 2.5, 3-ish. I had one that somebody found wandering around another town, and nobody seemed to claim it, and I had room, so I had Blossom. So we don't exactly know how old she was, but I kind of guess around the same. And then I actually bought one as with another chicken, and she died by the time she was 1. So I mean, I think they're great, but I mean, it's such a different thing. We're so used to dogs and cats showing us when they're sick or when they don't feel well, and we take them to the vet and we get medicine and then they get better. Chickens are prey, so they have to hide their illnesses till the very last minute. So half the time they seem totally fine, and 2 hours later you go out and they're dead because they're hiding their illness. They know if the hawk that's flying around is looking for the one that's sick because they don't have to work at it to get them. So they hide it. That's why you isolate new chickens, because it takes them about 2 weeks to realize that you're their hen mama and their hen papa, and you're not going to hurt them. And then their illnesses will show. And that's what happened with Lizzie. She got sick about 16 days after I had her. We got antibiotics but when you have more chickens, when you work, you're not out there 24/7. So you have to really be aware. And I think, it's just unfortunately the fact of life with dealing with prey instead of predators, and dogs and cats are predators. So it's a whole different deal. And I think in some cases, it can be a really good lesson for kids about the whole life and death thing. But it also is very traumatic. I mean, it's the same to me as if a dog of mine died. I get close relationships, whether they're therapy hens or not. I get close relationships with my hens, and it was heartbreaking every single time. But it was very interesting with Rosie. Rosie, they actually did a front page story on when I first got her, and I had no idea they were doing this. I was going to my very first assisted living visit. Somebody's family member had suggested we go, and it was the first time we got to do that. And they loved her, and I walk into the place, and the receptionist said, "Oh, you're here with the chicken, the Courier Post," which is all South Jersey, a pretty good sized paper. They're coming any minute now. It's like, I didn't even know they were coming. So they did this great story on Rosie and first therapy hen, and we were on Action News because they came to watch a thing we did. And then when Rosie died, the Courier Post did her obituary on the first page. They put a lot of the same pictures. The title was Haddon Township Loses Its Beloved Therapy Chicken on the front page. That's how much of an impact that this little hen had, being the first of any like that around here, that it was just amazing. But it was also heartbreaking. We had a little ceremony, and there's a small little farmette in Camden that they run to educate the local people and the local kids and whatnot. And we used to go up there and take the therapy chickens a lot. And so we actually had a ceremony and scattered Rosie's ashes up at the little farm where she spent a lot of time educating kids. But yeah, it never gets easy.
All right, well, that's a good segue, the bit about the news, not the fact about chickens dying or anything dying, but we have a little segment, I think 3.5 minutes, that CBS came in and did of Gwenne and her Camden County chickens and all the things she does. And we are also right near the top of the hour. So what I'm going to ask the audience to do is watch this video. If you have any other questions, either raise your hand or put them online. And Alicia continues to put in some great references for us. But let's play this, and then we'll come back we'll let Gwen say goodbye to us, give us any last thoughts that she has, and we'll then call it a wrap. So Reeb, if you wouldn't mind, would you please play the video? Gwen, while he does that, we're not going to be able to talk. So we'll just let the
and particularly the cost of eggs remain high across the U.S. As a result, interest in backyard chicken keeping is also rising across the country. National farm and animal retail chain Tractor Supply has seen sales of chicks more than double in the past 5 years, and they expect to sell 11 million chicks this year alone. But does getting eggs from backyard chickens actually save you any money? Kate Stanton has more.
There it is.
74-year-old Gwenne Baile has been raising chickens in the backyard of her suburban New Jersey home for 7 years.
It kind of dawned on me that I didn't really need a farm.
Baile's earned the nickname Chicken Lady of South Jersey for her advocacy and her education work around backyard keeping. She currently has 8 egg-laying hens.
Sandy is my alpha hen and also my oldest.
Interest in the practice increased during the pandemic, and again as the price of eggs has spiked in recent months. More than 58 million chickens have died of avian flu out of an estimated 300 million birds nationwide, the USDA reports. The worst outbreak in U.S. history has pushed egg prices 55% higher than the same time last year, according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics.
I went into it for the same reason a lot of people do. You know, I wanted eggs from hens where I knew that they had better lives than the ones on these commercial farms did. But I really didn't expect to completely become obsessed with them.
Tova Danovich is the author of Under the Henfluence, part memoir and part animal welfare reporting on the egg and chicken industries. She says people shouldn't expect to save money getting their eggs from backyard hens, but they should expect to get attached.
People are thinking that maybe it's easier to have chickens in your backyard than to rely on the grocery store. I think what a lot of them are going to learn is that having your own chickens is much more expensive than that $10 a dozen even eggs that you get at the store, but they are really lovely.
Estimates vary, but getting started can cost between $500 and $1,500. Expenses include a secure coop where chickens lay eggs and sleep, a predator-proof run, feeder and food, and chickens. The number of eggs laid per week varies by breed, and backyard hens typically don't lay during winter months.
I think the best day we've had is about 6 eggs out of 8.
The biggest obstacle to backyard chicken keeping isn't always cost. Local laws vary, and some prohibit it entirely.
The most common complaints that people have is smell and noise, and neither of them really are valid. None of the suburban towns allow roosters because they're too loud. It's a big misconception that you have to have a rooster in order to have eggs.
Baile worked for 5 years with Haddon Township, where she lives, to change their law in 2018. She's since helped 28 New Jersey communities change legislation to allow backyard hens through grassroots organizing and presenting at council meetings.
When I first found out about the law, it just said absolutely no barnyard animals were allowed, any kind. 4 hens are not going to smell like a huge chicken farm with millions of chickens that you can smell from miles away. We don't want to smell it either.
She also runs classes to teach others the best practices and takes her therapy hens to visit children and the elderly. And more than anything, she loves them.
They're funny, they're smart, the stuff that they come up with. We'll sit out there on a nice day and just watch them.
Kate Santishan, CBS News.
This Money Watch segment has been brought to you by Empower. Take control of your financial future and empower what's next.
All right. Well, that was a lot, and that was a very good little summary of what Gwen had been telling us. That reporter said Baile, and I think I avoid doing it during the whole time. So Gwen Baile, and
Yes, that was the only problem. They didn't pronounce my name right.
Well, it was very well done. Gwen, this has been awesome. You and I will talk again very soon. We've actually said that we'd love to partner with Gwenne on doing some of this education she's doing. And she didn't get a chance to talk too much. She was at city council last night, or township council, and helped them and had been working with them. They're another one that's now approved. She's up to 29 now. And she should be getting this message across all over the country and the world. At least we believe that. And if we can help her here at the Institute of Economics and the EAT team, we're going to do that. So we'll just try to reach out to her and let her tell us what she'd like us to do, and we'll do it. So anybody that anything you'd like to just have as parting words for us, Gwen?
Well, if I had my way, everybody in the world would be allowed to have chickens, whether they want to or not. That's fine. Nobody should be forced to do anything. But if you don't have them, you're missing out on an awful lot of love, an awful lot of just amazement at nature, and that little bit that we can all do to be helping our environment. So it's just wonderful. I wish I had been doing this for 74 years and not just the last 8 years of it. So, and thank you so much for having me. And I'd love to be able to get together and do some more things for you.
Well, we'd love that too. Arib, you're the one who put a lot of work into this. And Lisa, do either one of you got anything you'd like to say live here?
Lisa was the one who introduced, and we had a really good test session. So I really enjoyed the whole session. I never knew much about chickens, though my wife loves it. I'm not a big fan, but my wife loves them. So I think, yeah, it was a good learning moment for me. Thank you so much for that, Gwen.
You're welcome.
Yeah, this is Lisa, and Gwen, I want to say that I really appreciate your passion, that everything you're doing to advocate for people who want to have them, and I'm glad that you had a good time today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
Well, Gwen, kisses to you and to your chickens, and thank you so much. And Mark, why don't you take us out?